Today, we're delving into a contentious chapter of history to examine the 7 best Confederate generals. The American Civil War stands as a defining epoch for the United States, irrevocably altering the nation's trajectory. While the conflict's strategies and engagements are frequently the subject of intense scrutiny, the individuals who wore the gray are sometimes overlooked. Our focus is on the commanding generals, the men who directed armies, made fateful choices, and guided their soldiers through the fog of war. The title of general signifies the apex of military command, entailing not merely authority, but also profound accountability. These were not men who solely directed from the rear. Often, they were at the forefront of the fray, personifying the valor and command presence that characterized their leadership. Although the Confederate cause is rightly criticized for its foundation in secession and slavery, it is nevertheless crucial to acknowledge that these commanders demonstrated significant martial prowess and personal courage. Their heritage, entangled with the ideals they served, endures as a reflection of their military acumen, resolve, and capacity for leadership. So, for those curious about the premier generals of the Confederate South, you could consult a textbook, or you can persist in viewing this presentation. Before we commence our ranking, an honorable mention is due for John Bell Hood. When war erupted, he enlisted with the Confederacy and ascended swiftly through the officer ranks, propelled by his boldness and aggressive approach to combat. This reputation for pugnacious leadership earned him a promotion to temporary full general on July 18, 1864, and command of the Army of Tennessee in the Atlanta campaign. At 33, he was the youngest commander of an army in the entire war. The historian Bruce Catton contended that substituting General Joseph E. Johnston with John Bell Hood constituted one of the most severe errors of the conflict, asserting, quote, "The decision to replace Johnston with Hood was probably the single largest mistake that either government made during the war period," end quote. Hood's relentless offensive methods resulted in a succession of devastating losses, including the unsuccessful protection of Atlanta and the calamitous Franklin-Nashville campaign, which essentially annihilated the Army of Tennessee as an effective force. His command choices accelerated the downfall of Confederate opposition in the Western Theater, hastening the ultimate surrender of the South. While his aggressive spirit initially marked him as a rising figure, his tenure leading the Army of Tennessee stands as a warning about the perils of excessive audacity. Hood is an honorable mention because his promotion to full general was never ratified by the Confederate Senate, and he was returned to the rank of lieutenant general on January 23, 1865. Before we proceed with the ranking of the 7 Confederate generals, a word from our sponsor. If you find value in our content at Rootvolutionary, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. These actions genuinely assist us and enable the creation of more content like this. Now let us begin our ranking of Confederate generals. In the 7th position, whom I consider the least effective, is Samuel Cooper. Born in 1798, Cooper was a West Point graduate. In March of 1861, he left the U.S. Army and shortly thereafter received a commission in the Confederate forces, where he was appointed adjutant and inspector general, the highest-ranking officer in the entire Confederacy. Even though he held the rank of general, Cooper never once led an army in the field, nor was he directly involved in any fighting. His administrative talents were crucial for the Confederate war apparatus, yet he is predominantly recalled as an administrative administrator rather than a battlefield commander. And for that reason, he occupies the final spot on this list. Arriving at number 6 is Braxton Bragg. By the time the Civil War commenced, Bragg already had a distinguished military background. When the conflict started, he sided with the Confederacy. His initial achievements in assembling and drilling troops in Pensacola, Florida, resulted in his elevation to Major General and subsequently to full general in 1862. Despite his aptitude for strategy, Bragg's command was marred by incessant disputes with his junior officers and an inability to capitalize effectively on his triumphs. While Bragg was a considerable figure in the Confederate military endeavor, his reputation is mostly shaped by his troubled relations with fellow officers and his lack of enduring success in combat. One private, Sam Watkins, who later became a published author, wrote in his memoirs, quote, "None of Bragg's soldiers ever loved him. They had no faith in his ability as a general. He was looked upon as a merciless tyrant. He loved to crush the spirit of the men, period," end quote. Watkins' depiction of Bragg echoes the discontent pervasive among his troops. His method of command was frequently perceived as severe and dictatorial, which fostered the tense dynamics he experienced with both his officers and enlisted men. If not for Samuel Cooper's complete absence from combat, Bragg would undoubtedly be in the last position. Initiating the top 5 is P.G.T. Beauregard. Born in 1818 in Louisiana, Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard was a graduate of West Point in 1838. By the start of the Civil War, Beauregard possessed an established martial standing and was promptly named the first brigadier general in the Confederate Army. He emerged as the Confederacy's first celebrated general after commanding the successful shelling of Fort Sumter in April 1861, the inaugural battle of the war. His early triumphs persisted at the First Battle of Bull Run, where his units, together with those of General Joseph E. Johnston, achieved a vital Confederate success. After these initial victories, Beauregard was moved to the Western Theater, where he was instrumental in the Battle of Shiloh in 1862. Nonetheless, his leadership was questioned when he did not follow up on an early opportunity, resulting in a Confederate loss. Beauregard's command in the war's initial phases helped cement Confederate military assurance, but his subsequent challenges and disagreements with his superiors reduced his stature. His variable performance in battle and political troubles kept him from attaining a higher standing among Confederate leadership. Occupying the 4th spot is Joseph E. Johnston. By the outbreak of the Civil War, Johnston had achieved the rank of Quartermaster General in the U.S. Army, but he resigned to align with the Confederacy. In 1861, Johnston was among the most senior officers to join the Confederate cause and was instrumental in the Southern victory at the First Battle of Bull Run. However, his prudent tactics and repeated clashes with President Jefferson Davis impaired his efficacy as a commander. After being injured in the Peninsula Campaign of 1862, Johnston was superseded by Robert E. Lee. Later in the war, Johnston was assigned to lead the Army of Tennessee, where his defensive approaches delayed Union progress but did not produce conclusive triumphs. His hesitancy to commit to direct engagements led to his dismissal in the Atlanta Campaign of 1864. However, Johnston was restored to command in early 1865 to lead Confederate units in the Carolinas. Though by that stage, the conflict was drawing to a close. He finally surrendered to William T. Sherman in April 1865, several weeks after Lee's capitulation at Appomattox. Securing the 3rd position is Edmund Kirby Smith. Born in 1824, Smith rose to become a prominent commander in the Confederate Army, where he was tasked with leading the Trans-Mississippi Department, a vital yet remote sector of the Confederacy. Even though he was cut off from the primary war theaters, Smith was crucial in repulsing Federal incursions. Though Smith never commanded a principal Confederate army like Robert E. Lee or Joseph E. Johnston, his leadership guaranteed that the Confederacy maintained a foothold in the West for a longer duration than most expected. Smith was among the final Confederate generals to yield, surrendering to Union troops in May 1865, a full 8 weeks after the collapse of Robert E. Lee's army. Holding down the 2nd spot is Albert Sidney Johnston. By the time the Civil War began, Johnston was among the most esteemed officers in the South, possessing a robust reputation for discipline, strategic insight, and leadership across numerous military campaigns. He was named the commander of Confederate forces in the Western Department, which encompassed the Western Theater and crucial zones along the Mississippi River. He later assumed command of the Army of the Mississippi and directed Confederate forces to early victories. Tragically, Johnston was fatally wounded during the Battle of Shiloh, a severe blow to the Confederate cause. His demise cost the Confederacy one of its most revered leaders at a pivotal juncture in the war. But his command approach had indicated considerable potential, and his loss created a significant gap in the Confederate command hierarchy. And the number one ranked Confederate general is, as you likely anticipated, Robert E. Lee. When Virginia seceded from the Union in 1861, Lee was confronted with a monumental choice. Despite being offered command of the Union Army, Lee elected to resign from the U.S. Army and join the Confederacy, a decision that would shape his entire legacy. Lee was made commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, where he rapidly became the South's most accomplished general. His legendary successes at Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, and Second Bull Run are the stuff of legend. However, Lee's loss at the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863 represented a major shift in the war's momentum. The defeat concluded his offensive into Northern Territory and damaged Southern morale. Lee is extensively considered one of the finest military tacticians in American history. Even though the Confederacy was finally vanquished, Lee's legacy persists as a demonstration of the intricacies of warfare and command, and he remains one of the most examined and respected personalities in military history. All right, there you have it. The 7 Confederate generals of the Civil War, ranked from worst to first based on their contributions to the Southern cause and their wartime achievements. Do you concur with this list, or perhaps you hold a different viewpoint? Whichever it is, I want to hear your perspectives in the comments below. I love interacting with the community here at Rootvolutionary. If you haven't done so already, please like this video and subscribe to the channel to ensure you don't miss our upcoming content.